in the next 18 months, we have a real opportunity to protect at least 30% of the marine environment by 2030. Current political global targets, whether through the Convention on Biological Diversity or through the UN Sustainable Development Goals, are set to sunset in 2020. And so it's imperative that we move forward and take on, the global community take on a new set of targets and ambition for protecting the marine environment and marine biodiversity for the next decade. And the high seas play an important component of that. The high seas make up over 2/3 of the world's ocean. It's the waters beyond the 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone of countries. But let's face it, species don't recognize political borders. And increasingly, studies show that there's connectivity between ecosystems in national waters and the high seas. So the activities that are happening in the high seas and the degradation happening in the high seas affects national waters and vice versa. Currently, there are roughly 24 regional and sectoral governance bodies managing ocean resources, but primarily from an extractive perspective. And as we've heard already, overfishing continues to be a problem, despite the fact that regional fisheries management organizations have within them mechanisms to conserve and sustainably manage fish stocks. Likewise, the International Maritime Organization, despite having a mechanism to create conservation areas or set aside areas that are sensitive for shipping purposes, none exist in the high seas. So the High Seas Treaty is long overdue to really ensure that there's cross-sectoral management, cross-sectoral marine protected areas from the myriad of threats that are facing biodiversity in the high seas, and to put conservation front and center. The High Seas Treaty process at the UN was sparked over a decade ago, and the conversations are at a point now with increasing momentum and increasing political will for formal negotiations, which were launched about a year and a half ago. And so we have 2 additional meetings left. There's an intergovernmental conference happening in August of this year, and the final meeting will happen in the first half of 2020. And we're really optimistic that in this time frame, even though it seems short, building upon the discussions that have been going on in the UN for the past decade, that we can have a robust legal mechanism that will enable the establishment of highly and fully protected marine reserves, marine protected areas, and also ensure the effective management of these marine protected areas, as well as having environmental impact assessments that can evaluate the cumulative impacts of new and emerging activities on the high seas. In order to do this, this new treaty must enshrine really good principles of governance. Core to that are decision-making by a conference of parties, an independent scientific body, and clear rules of engagement of how to engage with existing bodies that are operating in the high seas.